No. Hammer, not necessarily the ideal tool for working with insulation foam and soft, fragile materials for dioramas. But I am going to tell you what some of my favorite tools for working with dioramas actually are, especially if you're new to this and you don't know where to start. Let me steer you down the right path. There are tons and tons of materials for working with dioramas, and there are also tons and tons of tools you could use. I'm going to give you 5 of what I consider the most essential starter tools that you could possibly have around. Now, of course, there is dozens and dozens of tools that you could have and you could use, but I think these 5 are at least a good start, or if you don't already have them in your toolkit, it might be good to track them down, because after this video, you'll know why. Before I list number 5, I'm going to give you 3 honorable mentions of things that may seem a little obvious once I say them, but I think they're important to have on hand as sort of always tools and always things to keep in mind for any scenario. Aprons. I actually have 4 different aprons that I currently use. I probably will get a 5th soon. 2 of them I have, they go around your neck and they tie around the back. When you put a lot of weight in them, they can kind of make you slouch over and not feel the greatest. I have a heavier apron that you can pull up on the sides. It's actually much easier to adjust, a little bit more comfortable. But my favorite apron is my newest one, made of canvas, that actually makes an X across my back and is much, much more comfortable to hold lots and lots of tools in. The cheaper ones that go over my neck, you can probably guess what they're used for just by looking at them. My second honorable mention is scissors. It's good to have a variety of scissors, some big, some small, all-purpose ones, fine tip ones, small ones, medium ones, long ones. You'll find that you'll be wanting them if you don't have them for cutting different sizes and shapes and styles of materials. Also some good advice on what scissors to use in what way. If you start using one type of scissor to cut, let's say metal, keep that scissor strictly for metal. If you have another type of scissor you use specifically to cut fabrics, keep that one for fabric. It does make your scissors last longer and stay sharper longer. And my last honorable mention is tape. Have a variety of tapes on hand, especially masking tapes in different widths. If you're putting masking tape over an already finished surface with paint on it, go with something lighter, like the yellow or the green frog tape. Standard brown masking tape is excellent too, but it's good to have a variety in different sizes. And throughout the course of watching many different videos on my channel, you'll see me use all of these and more for different purposes. So it's good to have at least one of each style and maybe a couple of each size on hand if you plan on doing more than just 1 or 2 projects. All right, my number 5 most favorite tool, especially to have on hand for people who are new or experienced, is a miniature miter box. That's spelled M-I-T-R-E, miter box. These are amazing little tools. When you have a fresh blade on there, they can cut small bits of wood, metal, and plastic, as long as it can fit inside of that miter box section. And it's got pre-slotted angles, so you can do things at a 45-degree angle from each direction. Some miter boxes even have extra slots to do additional angles. This is one I've used for many years. It's cheap, it's affordable, and you can replace the blade. There's a link below if you want to get one, or you can probably find it at your local hobby shop. These are extremely invaluable, especially if you need to cut long, tubular, or skinny materials, and you don't have access to power tools. I use this on probably every single diorama I have ever made in the last decade. Number 4 is pliers. Have an array of pliers. I would say at least 3 to start. Having one of them at least be a larger size with some weight to it, it's a good thing to have on hand. I keep a pair of flat nose pliers for bending things at perfectly 90-degree angles or keeping sharp bends in them. I keep needle nose pliers that have wire cutters in them to cut said wire. The flat nose pliers as well can bend cardboard, styrene, thin pieces of metal, pre-cut materials to have sharp angles to fit around things. They're very, very helpful. I also have a pair of jeweler's pliers. There's a lot of different versions of these, but a basic one with conically shaped tapered cone tips is great for bending wire and little curly cues and getting all kinds of very specific shapes you may not realize you need to add fine detail. Sometimes having things that are in different weights and sizes can come in handier than you think. Having everything the same weight and the same size may actually hinder you from being able to do fine work in different ways you might not expect or understand until you're in the scenario where you need it. Number 3 is sewing pins. These are pins typically used in the fabric world to just hold things together while you do other things, whether it's cutting things out or prepping them to actually go through a sewing machine. I discovered that using these years ago when working with foam was an excellent temporary dry fitting technique. I kept putting together dioramas with foam and things, and I didn't want to glue them together yet, and I didn't have a good way to tack them together without messing up the fit of my parts. And I realized sewing needle pins The holes that they leave and the marks that they leave into materials, especially foam, will usually disappear with paint and a little bit of sanding. So I don't really worry about the size of the holes, but they're excellent for holding things in place, especially while glue dries. I use them all the time to hold little objects on top of surfaces while they're gluing. They work in foam, clay, and even soft woods like balsa and basswood if you're careful. They are quite invaluable, and I guarantee you will find endless uses for these things on your project. Number 2, this is absolutely a standard you should have, is at least one metal ruler with a cork bottom. You can, of course, have plastic rulers, you can have wooden rulers, but ideally I recommend a high-quality stainless steel ruler with a cork bottom. Why do I say that? Well, it's got excellent protection when you're dragging a blade across it. Of course, it's a nice straight edge. You need a reliable straight edge to make straight edges. It's excellent at protecting your hand from knife blades you may be dragging across that straight edge. And the cork bottom helps to stabilize and cushion your placement of that. I find when using plastic rulers, they tend to slide around, and I've accidentally nicked myself with my blade trying to use them. So I don't even think I own any plastic rulers anymore, to be honest. It's all metal, and I actually have 4 different sizes: 12, 18, 24, and 36 inches, and I use all of them. They're extremely invaluable, especially when I need to break down large pieces of foam to get smaller sections out. Having a metal ruler and the number 1 tool on my list will get you where you need to go. And the number 1 item on my list is the hero tool I probably use the most out of anything else when making dioramas and props in my workshop: an extendable box cutter. Now, you can get these in a cheaper format that have a plastic casing around them. I definitely prefer the weightier ones that have some actual heft to them. I find with the plastic ones, they're generally made a lot cheaper. I find the lighter they are, the less control I end up having when I'm using the blade. I like the ones that have a weightier casing around them. I also love these because the blades are very, very, very easy to change. Obviously, you want to be careful when you do that process, but the blades are affordable, they're cheap, they're easy to change. And even if you're just using them to cut with the tip like you would with a hobby knife, if the tip gets dull, you don't have to change out an entire blade and throw the whole blade away. You can break off pieces of the blade. They're made to snap off and snap away so that you can have a fresh tip to cut with. I actually keep these in 3 different sizes. I have small, medium, and large. I use the large one generally to break down large pieces of foam or do really, really fine, high quality, long cuts that I need control over. I put a fresh blade in and make that cut very, very carefully. I use the small one probably the most when cutting things down. I use it not just on foam, but to cut things out of paper and plastic as well. Having these on hand with extra blades is probably the best tool you can have in your arsenal when working with anything in a workshop, especially dioramas, miniatures, and props. I hope this video was helpful to you, especially if you're new or old. If you found what I presented in this video helpful or useful, give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. I have tons and tons of instructional videos on this channel and hours of live content on the public space as well as in the members section if you're interested in spending more time with me and seeing how I use these tools. And I will see you next time.